Okay, guys, we're going to try this here. So, we're going to get ahead of the game and we're going to start with Wednesday, September 11th. So, this is for Wednesday. We're talking about inverse trig functions. We've already done these before. But we're talking about principal values. There's a little music in the background. I'm at the house, in the dining room, so if there's a crazy noise or anything, it's probably just the kids going crazy. Principal values, when it comes to trig functions, you guys already know the basic principal values, and I'm not going to give you like the full-blown idea, but let's say if we take sine, we got sine right here, and if we have sine back here, this point is 0 and 0. And this point, let's just talk about this one. This is going to be pi over 2 and 1. So really what we're saying is the principal values are your main points as you go around the unit circle. And for inverse trigonometric functions, it's the idea of going backwards to an angle. Normally, we take, let's say, 30 degrees right here, and that's pi over 6, and we say, what's the sine of pi over 6? Well, when we ask what the sine of pi over 6 is, we get a fraction, which is 1/2. So, the principal value for the sine of pi over 6 is 1/2, but we're talking about inverse functions. So, inverse functions go the opposite way when we're asking, what is the value in radians at 1/2? Well, the principal value for that is pi over 6. So we've just got these different values that are associated with each other, and that's the basic idea of principal values. And so sine is going to be different. Sine is going to have your x values off the unit circle. So as we deal with the principal values, we're just matching up our radians with our value off the unit circle. We've already talked about arc cosine function. Remember, arc cosine function is the inverse of cosine. So the arc cosine function, we either write it as arc cosine, or on your calculator, it's the cosine of -1. So we got to hit the second button. So don't forget that that's all it really means. So we're just doing the inverse. This would be the inverse of sine. And since this is the inverse of sine, then the cosine, we write it as, I'm having trouble here, arc sine, or using the calculator, we go second sine of -1. So we just start working backwards, and this is also arctan. So they're pretty straightforward, arctangent. And then for arctangent, slide that up. It's going to be second, and then you're going to hit the tangent button so we can get the tangent of -1. So we're just, when we're given a fraction, we work backwards towards the angle, and then so it's solving these equations. So if we have our regular sine graph, if you guys remember that for the regular sine graph, we had a range of minimum, which would be our range for a sine graph would be a minimum of -1 to +1. So that would be our range when it came to our regular sine graph. But our arc sine graph, the range becomes the domain. So our domain of the arc sine graph is -1 to 1. So these are all the possible values that I can use when I plug it in to find my actual angle or my actual radians. So these are just some vocabulary pieces that you guys can kind of utilize. And so when we tackle that, let me find the other page here. I bet you I need some equations. Well, I am missing a couple of pages. So what we'll do is, so this is for assignment 14. I'm not going to do 12 just yet. I will have to do another video. So this is just, we'll just go ahead and stop here. This is just for the vocabulary of this one. Yeah, we'll go ahead and work with that piece. I just realized I need the book for this one, so I'll have to go get the numbers off of that one. So this is just our vocabulary video for inverse trigonomic functions.